everyone. Thanks for joining Game Trade Media at Alliance Open House. I'm Gretchen, and I'm here with Alex from Steve Jackson Games.
Hello.
Hi. So what do you have for us here?
We're going to be looking at Deadly Doodles. This is one of the newest games from Steve Jackson Games, and it is a marvelous little 15-minute, what we call is a draw and draw rather than a roll and write, because you draw cards and then draw on your whiteboard.
Awesome.
And the object of the game is we're going to be drawing paths through our little dungeon here, trying to tag items in order to score points. Very straightforward.
Right. Yeah.
So, if you look at your board, so you get a board and I get a board and everyone gets a board, we have a series of bags of loot, which you can see there are 4 of those on the board, and loot is, of course, good. We have a dragon that sits in the center of our board. We have 6 pairs of monsters and weapons. So there's an A monster and an A weapon, a B monster and a B weapon. And there are 6 entrances around the outside of the dungeon where you can start your entry into the depths of below. On each round, and there are 7 rounds during the game, we're going to flip up 4 cards. And these 4 cards we will use to start drawing our path into the dungeon. So if I looked at those cards, I could say, I like the look of that one, maybe to come in that entranceway right there. I can rotate these any way I would need to make them fit, so perhaps I'll take that one, go through that C weapon, and I'll tag it off there to show that I've got it. And then also, why don't I start a new entrance down here? So I'll come in that entrance there. I have a dead end to use, so I'll come back down in there, tag that D weapon, and that would be the end of this round. And of course, I would be using these cards. You would be using these same cards at the same time. We'd sort of be doing this with our boards up and be sneaky. And we'll get to why that's important in a second here. But 2 general rules to keep in mind when you're drawing these is, number 1, each card you'll see have these little entryway passageway diamonds. So everything you draw goes from a diamond to a diamond, which means as there are no diamonds on any of the heavy black walls, you can never draw a path that touches a black wall. And secondly, everything you draw must come in at an entrance or be able to trace a path back to an entrance. You cannot parachute into a dungeon. So follow those 2 rules and you're golden. Beyond that, there are 2 special cards that we could encounter. So one of them is a draw 2. If that happens, we simply set that card aside and we draw 2 in its place.
Oh, no.
And if we have another one come up just like that, we'll put another 2 in its place like that. And we have become trapful, the other card that we may encounter. Traps simply mean we're going to place an X on a spot on our board, empty square where no other icon exists and where we have not drawn a path, and we cannot draw a path there for the rest of the game.
All right. So you want to be clever where you put those.
Want to be a little clever and without being too predictable. And we'll get to that scoring, which is where we're at. Scoring. We've already done everything we need to play the game.
Wow.
7 rounds, so 7 sets of cards, and then we'll score based on the criteria shown below. So, for example, we'll give you 2 points for every loot bag that you touched, and it doesn't matter whether you dead end into something or you pass through it, you get points for it at the end of the game. 2 points for those, except if you happen to go through or tag the dragon, we'll double the score for those. So the dragon itself isn't worth points, but 4 points for bag of loot if you get the dragon. 1 point for every weapon that you touch. 4 points if you touch a monster that you have the corresponding weapon for. So if I get the A monster and the A weapon, that's 5 points total. 1 for the weapon, 4 for the monster. -2 if I go through a monster that I don't have the right weapon for. Don't do that. +1 for every entryway that you don't use. So if you don't come in the entryway, you get a point for it. And that includes down here where I've put that trap. I didn't come in that entryway, so I still get that point down there. -2 for every unused card. Don't worry about that. That's a super edge case. Everyone uses all the cards. We're all good. And finally, traps go work as follows. We, at the end of the game, will look and I will say, hey, I put a trap at I4. And I'm going to look over here on your board. And if you have a path that goes through I4, you lose 3 points.
I fall into the trap.
My traps affect other players. And that's the game. If you'd like, we can fire up a couple of rounds just to see how it goes and see what you like. So, we'll take these cards here. We'll take that off to the side for a second. Shuffle those in. A typical game lasts about 15 minutes once you know what's going on, so it flies along very well. And because of the traps, you can't be too terribly predictable. So if someone says, well, I always go for the dragon. Well, I always trap either side of the dragon, just as you go for the dragon. So there has to be a little bit of change to your strategy game to game, especially when you play with the same group, so that you don't get predictable, so that the traps don't always fall on your strategy. So if we give you 1, 2, 3, 4. So take a look at those, see where you might want to come in and do something with them. So I will look at my board and say, indeed. Now, a lot of people will sometimes say, well, how do I know that you're drawing correctly, or that you're not putting extra lines where you shouldn't? And one of the things you can do is there is a small square in the upper corner of each room that you can either just tag with a dot, which is typically what I do, to say, that's what I did, and I don't have to. So the next round, if I forget which ones I've done, I can always look back and say those are from previous rounds. This is from this round. Or you can number them. You can actually put the round number in there. So I drew this in round 1. Round 1, this is when it's drawn 2. However you want to keep track of that information.
All right.
All right. Are we good?
Yeah.
All right. So let's sweep those and put out another set of 4. This is round 2 of 7. If we were playing a full game.
All right.
So
here and I'm hoping
this is really
out.
Exciting television, of course, because we're
way.
consuming our boards. And yes, exactly. It's like
I'm
you have no idea what's going on behind
I'm
this board, but it's
sneaky.
amazing.
It is. Right. It is. All right. And I hope that I don't know if I did the right way I wanted to do for that. We're gonna find out. Yes.
All right.
And then. So do you have to have the weapon before you go through the monster, or?
At the end of the game, we're going to look at all your paths, and doesn't matter whether they connect, whether or not a monster's on one path and the weapon's on another. It's just going to be a snapshot of everything you touched. So if you touch it, it counts. Doesn't matter what path it's on or in which order you may have gotten those things. And additionally, there's one other little quirk as well when we talk about the replayability and the unpredictability of things like traps. If you place a trap on your board and I put a trap in the same spot, our traps blow up on each other. We lose 3 points. Everyone else is unaffected by those traps. So you can't even be predictable with the traps, let alone the paths. All right, so we'll try and get one more round here.
And all right.
Okay. All right, let's just go ahead and wrap that up there, and we'll kind of see we're sort of a game in progress, but we can do our general scoring scheme here. So if we look at +2 for every loot bag you've gone through, and right now you haven't gone through any, and I've only gone through 1, so that would be 2 points for me, and 0 points for you for the moment. We would say 1 point for every weapon your path crosses, and I have 2 weapons so far. You have
I have one weapon.
1 weapon so far, so that would be 1.2 points. +4 for every monster that you've touched. You have the sea weapon and the sea monster. So that's 4 points for that. So you'd have 4 points going
the 1
there.
Up here and the 4 there.
Yep.
All right.
You have -2 for every monster you've touched that you don't have a weapon yet.
I skirted around it.
Yeah, so far you've been
like,
studiously avoiding monster A there, so you've done a good job there. +1 for every entryway you haven't used. So you'd score 1, 2, 3, 4, and that drew that on your board before we started. So you'd have 4 points going for there.
Right.
And then at the bottom, your trap right now would be at D4. I look at my board, and you didn't get me at D4 yet. So maybe before the end of the game, I would wander my way that way. And that would be the way you'd score. You'd add up those numbers into your final score box, and you would have a score.
Awesome. Well, that's super easy to learn. And, I mean, the sneakiness, the playfulness of trying to figure out, well, where do I think the person I'm playing against is going to have, those traps? Like trying to figure those out is super sneaky, and I love it.
The designers, Randy Shinneman and Sam Mitchke, when they were tasked to come up with this game, they looked at a lot of the roll and writes that were out there and kind of identified some things that they wanted to do differently from what a lot of the other ones represented. So the asymmetrical board, the idea that you would have elements that would affect other players' boards negatively. So they really did a nice job of sort of incorporating some elements here that made it that does make it pull it apart a little bit from some of the other offerings that are out there, and makes it a very interactive and a lot of fun. And of course, you can play as many players as can see these cards.
That's
so
awesome.
everyone can see the cards you can play. The only modifications we usually adjust for is if there are 5 to 8 players, we'll pull out one of the traps so that the trap number of traps you're affected by remains consistent. And above that, you either play in groups of 4, or there's a way that we're working on to be able to say you're going to play the players to the left and the right of you if you're in like a large circle sort of scenario. But otherwise, great little game, available now. It is our first printing run is disappearing quickly. The second one will be in just before Christmas, so we're looking forward to getting as many of these things in the hands as we can.
And is there anywhere we can go online to find out more information?
Absolutely. For all of your information about Steve Jackson Games, your starting point should always be the Steve Jackson Games website at sjgames.com.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for playing a very short round with me.
Indeed.
And we'll see you at your friendly local game store.
Thanks.